In 2020, in response to the National Black Lives Matters protest, MSNBC host Ari Melber looked into the cameras and apologized to Black audiences for the white society's constant depiction in print that depicts Black people most often using the lowercase b, while most often using the uppercase W when referring to white people. This might seem like an insignificant issue to those who are unaware of the many hidden social sciences that are currently secretly being deployed for maintaining white social dominance over the Black population. Social science is one of the branches of science devoted to the study of human behavior. More specifically, how people interact with each other, behave, and develops as a society. It is also used to subliminally steer and shape society in ways serving the objectives of the white ruling class. This includes maintaining white social dominance over the Black population. Our ignorance of these social science is the white oppressor's greatest power over us. This is why those of us who know must teach. African proverb. The lowercase Black is a color, not a person. Nor should a lowercase letter be assigned to a people. When referring to Black people as a distinct racial or ethnic group, a uppercase letter B should always be used. However, for centuries, we've witnessed notable white magazines, newspapers, and school textbooks, most often using the lowercase b when referring to Black people. Black people should always be capitalized. But by constantly placing a lowercase b onto Black people, while constantly placing an uppercase W onto white people, this subliminally conveys the myth that whites are inherently superior to Black people. Subliminal messages are messages hidden within the propaganda that we receive that are deliberately designed to bypass our conscious mind but becomes embedded into our subconscious mind. The fact that it wasn't until the summer of 2020, after the Black Lives Matters protests began to escalate, that the white establishment opted to start capitalizing the B when referring to Black people, demonstrate that the white establishment is deliberately marginalizing Black people. They are completely aware of it. They subliminally marginalize Black people. The white society constantly feeds false propaganda to the public that falsely exalts whites and falsely marginalizes Black people to subliminally convey the myth that whites are inherently superior. The image of the world that the world sees are controlled completely by the white society, okay? Because they control the media image and the narratives. And they falsely exalt themselves while falsely marginalizing Black people. It's also why the global white media rarely, if ever, shows the many slums and ghettos of Europe, while rarely ever showing the beautiful cities in Africa. They even distort their maps by making Africa appear 13 times smaller than its true relative size, while making all countries where white people come from appear significantly larger than their true sizes. The intention here is not to say that all information that we receive and all images that are depicted within the media are distorted to subliminally convey that whites are superior to Blacks. It's not all saying that. But when we critically think and look at facts as they are, we cannot ignore the fact that of how cartoonishly unrealistic it actually is that virtually all information that we receive from white sources about us are consistently negative and marginalized, while all that we receive about Caucasians are consistently positive and exalted, and or favors whites over Blacks. This is not a realistic scenario. It's a cartoonishly unrealistic one. For this reason alone, it is more than reasonable to take a closer look at the scenario. The reason for this cartoonishly unrealistic scenario is because all societies function based upon the narratives that are fed into a society. The thoughts and behaviors of the masses aligns with the information that are repetitively and systematically fed into a society. and the information that are repetitively and systematically fed into the white dominant society are deliberately distorted to falsely exalt whites and to falsely marginalize black people. White social scientists determined a long time ago that doing so creates and sustains false assumptions within the society that directly affects hiring, firing, promotions, and retention practices in ways that greatly aids in maintaining white social dominance and white social capital over the black population. Also, by perpetually falsely exalting whites and falsely marginalizing black people, this also subconsciously conditions millions of black peoples to perceive ourselves through a false inherent inferior identity that makes many of us feel subservient towards whites. This makes us more compliant with white dominance over our lives. White social scientists describe this nefarious practice as merely instilling a value system into the collective subconscious minds of black people that makes us adhere to the authority and existing infrastructure of the white dominant society. The propaganda programming works so effectively that it not only makes black people more compliant with white dominance over our lives, it in many cases makes many black people even prefer white dominance over our lives. They also ghettoize, and denigrate our media images, thus creating a false derogatory depictions of us. The mindsets and behaviors of many black people then conform to those derogatory media depictions of us that have been accepted as being our reality. It's why millions of African Americans now self-identify by the N-word, sags our pants, glorifies pimps, and speaks in jive English. Those behaviors are the result of negative media social engineering by white oppressive forces. This is all possible because those who write the people's narrative and controls the people's media images literally controls their culture. Because the white society writes all of our narratives and controls our media images, they're able to negatively steer our culture while misleading us to believe that we are negatively steering ourselves. Because of this hidden fact, there are now more enslaved black people than at any previous time in history. The white society's enslavement of black people is now mostly mental enslavement. Excuse me. And those black people who don't critically think never notices their mental change. If you think this is some silly conspiracy theory, it's because you're not critically thinking based upon the true history shared between our racial group and the white society. For this disclosure is totally consistent with how the white society has always treated black people throughout history. Given the white society's racist, narcissistic, and notoriously unethical tendencies demonstrated throughout history, is it not plausible to conceive that they would now exploit their monopoly over our narratives and media images to shape public perceptions as well as our own interpretation of realities in ways that aids them in maintaining their social dominance and their social capital over us? Of course they would. It's the way they are, it's the way they've always been, and it's the only way they know how to be. The white establishment has never earned our blind trust, nor have they ever earned the credibility to control what we believe about ourselves, nor to control our media images. They merely socially engineered us to believe that they have earned this credibility. They have not. Don't be fooled. If the oppressors were truly superior, they wouldn't have to distort so many facts and tell so many lies in order to convey it. Nor would they have to work so hard and behind the scene to handicap those whom they claim are inferior. The reason why they put so much time and effort into distorting the perception of reality is because the true reality is the opposite from what they've misled millions to believe. The white society sits upon a throne of white exalting and black marginalizing lies. They've lied to us about everything to falsely exalt themselves over us. The true reality is that most violent crimes in the U.S. are in fact committed by Caucasians. The largest recipient of welfare in the U.S. are in fact Caucasians. The largest benefactors of affirmative actions are Caucasian women. Therefore, by extension, Caucasians have benefited most from affirmative action. And in spite of cultural traumas wrought by the injustices of slavery and white racism, most inventions that have revolutionized the world were in fact either invented by black people or were directly inspired by early inventions made by black people. And long before the Europeans invaded Africa, it was Africans that civilized Europe. All of Greece's first scholars were educated by African scholars. Africans also introduced the daily bath to Europeans. And when I tell you that they've lied to us about everything to falsely exalt themselves, I do mean everything. For although Caucasians share more physical characteristics with the white-skinned Neanderthals of ancient Europe than they presently does so with we melanated Africans, they've nonetheless totally separated themselves from those white-skinned Neanderthals of ancient Europe and have instead falsely attached themselves onto we African Homo sapiens. They do so while claiming themselves as being the highest evolved Homo sapiens, while falsely claiming we Africans as being the lowest evolved. They explain away their physical differences from we Africans by saying that they turned white due to migrating to the colder climates of Europe, an alleged form of cold weather albinism. However, it's been scientifically proven that Caucasians are not African albinos, absolutely not. They actually retain their skin color and their hair type from the Neanderthal DNA. It's been scientifically proven that Africans are the only true homogeneous species. Our melanated skin and our hair type are the proven direct result of Homo sapien DNA. All other groups are actually scientifically classified as Homo sapiens sapiens. The additional sapiens means modern humans that evolved from primates. Unlike other groups, Africans are not included on the Darwin evolutionary theory list because Africans have instead always been Homo sapiens. The reason why the white society, in spite of speaking negatively about us, they all claim they came from us. Isn't the hypocrisy in that? But they do so because doing so is necessary in order to give themselves a Homo sapien origin. Everything we've been taught by the white society are lies that falsely exalt themselves and falsely marginalizes us, because society and the public perception function based upon the narratives, the information that are fed into a society. So they feed lies into a society to keep the society functioning in ways that aids in maintaining white social dominance and white social capital over the black population. According to social scientists, perception is more important than reality because people function based upon their perceptions of reality. So the narratives that we receive have been distorted to create a perception of white racial superiority. And that perception aids in maintaining their social dominance. If the truth be known, this social dominance over black people would become eroded. Your perception of reality is an elaborate white deception created by false narratives that have been fed into your mind. And as long as you continue believing those false narratives, you are in fact mentally enslaved by the white society. Their lies, you believing their lies will give them their power over you. It's time to wake up and learn the truth of our plight and condition. One love and peace.